All right, welcome everyone. My name is Eric Foley. I'm the residential sales director for Earthlight Technologies in Ellington, Connecticut. We are coming to you today from our off-grid cabin on the grounds of our Earthlight headquarters. And today I'm really excited to sit down with Tristan Kinsey. He is our sales director with Earthlight on the West Coast. And we're here today to talk a little bit about a new product that Tristan and the guys over at Earthlight in Oregon are going to be offering. So, Tristan, why don't you break the good news and let us know what's happening over there?
Yeah, thanks for having me here today. It's great to be on the East Coast and see everybody here. So we've been a heavy cash loan product offering in solar in the last few years in Oregon, and so we're excited to announce that we have a PPA now to offer to customers. We're trying to learn how to bring that to market, and maybe today you can help us explain how you guys have been selling PPAs versus cash versus loan here in the Connecticut market for years.
Yeah, I've actually been offering PPAs to our customers probably my entire time in solar, actually in Connecticut, which is about 8 years. And the PPA has changed throughout the years. And in the present version that of the Power Purchase Agreement, I think right now is probably the best version that it has been. So it is really a great option for our customers. It offers a lot of different benefits versus cash and financing to the point that you made. In Connecticut, anyways, there's, with the federal ITC changing, incentives changing in the state, you know, sometimes ownership makes more sense than others, but now more than ever, the PPA might actually make sense to some where it didn't make sense in the past. So we're excited to bring that to customers, to continue bringing that to customers. But you should be excited to bring it to customers over there because it's going to offer your customers a immediate way to lower their electric bill. In contrast to when you have ownership, there's typically an ROI, a return on investment, a payback period of time that could take, 5, 6, 7 years or more, depending on the system. But the PPA offers immediate savings.
Okay. What were some of the reasons that a customer would select PPA over cash or over loan?
One of the biggest reasons. So I'm really excited to announce that I just went solar with Earthlight. So I've been in solar for 8 years. Yeah, thank you. And we finally went solar. And the reason why we actually went with a PPA, my biggest concern, and it's going to be different for every homeowner, but my biggest concern, or our biggest concern, my wife and I, was our debt to income ratio. So we have 2 kids in college, and we want to keep as much capital, as much liquid cash on hand as we can. We also look forward into retirement. I'm turning 50 this year, and hopefully I can retire, in the next 10 to 15 years. And we're looking at retirement homes, vacation homes, and I want to keep my debt to income low. So with a PPA, I'm not actually paying for the system. I'm not actually taking on debt. Whereas with a cash deal or with a loan, with financing, you have to pay that liquid up front. And essentially from there, now you've got some debt. If you go with a bank financing, you're going to carry that debt, whether it's a 10, 15, 20-year loan term, that's going to show against your debt to income. So for us, cash, we wanted to keep our liquid. We didn't want to put DTI, in our finances with a loan. So we decided to go with a PPA because it's no money up front. We don't actually own the system. And the best part about a PPA is we're taking solar panels, we're putting them on our roof, we're creating renewable, clean energy, and we're simply going to pay less for that energy that comes off of our roof instead of going with the utilities, which is unpredictable, fossil fuels, and, especially in Connecticut, the rates just continue to go up, up, and up.
You mentioned that you don't buy the system or pay for the system at all. Who owns the system? How does that process work? Maybe even start at Earthlight, uh, how we're involved, and then utility, and then the lease provider.
Yeah, so there is a PPA financing company that actually what we call holds the paper, right? So they're going to essentially own the system. Earthlight is the contractor. So Earthlight is going to actually install the system and maintain the system. So we're not purchasing the system. It's owned by the PPA financing company.
Okay.
And what typically they do is they take on some of the incentives, some of the federal incentives. They actually turn those values and those benefits onto the customer by lowering the kilowatt hour rate. So with a PPA, you're actually going to pay a lower kilowatt hour rate. And in most cases, you can lock that kilowatt hour rate in for less than what the utility company is actually charging you in the present day. And then on the go forward, you're simply paying less for that energy. You're actually paying the financing company, not Earthlight. So Earthlight is going to install the system and maintain the system. And then you will then have a relationship with the financing company for the term of the PPA.
Okay. So how long these PPAs last, and how are we looking at, like, more of a, sounds like we're looking at more of a hedge against inflation 5, 10, 15 years from now as utilities continue to scale? You're locked in.
Yeah. So most PPAs, typical PPAs, 25-year agreement.
Okay.
Right. It's funny because sometimes one of the objections is, oh, 25 years, that's a long time. And then we'll say, well, how long is your agreement with the utility company? And they have to stop and think and go, oh yeah, that's right.
Forever.
You don't have one. It's forever, right? Or we'll say, well, yeah, 25 years seems like a long time. But, well, how long do you think you'll need electricity?
Right.
Right? Oh, probably forever. Right.
Right.
So the hedge on inflation is an interesting topic because in Connecticut, we've seen electricity rates skyrocket over the last 10 years. 20 years ago, we were paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour rate. That's your supply and your delivery combined. And now we're paying in the 30s, right? So we're paying 30 cents, 32 cents. I think it got as high as 34 cents in 2023. So it does fluctuate. And if I showed you the graph, you'd be really excited if it was your 401k, but it's not. It's your energy profile. So we're paying roughly somewhere between 30 and 32 cents typically now. And with a PPA, because of some of the incentives that the financing company actually takes on, they'll be able to lower your rate and actually lower and give you a rate that was probably our normal residents in Connecticut were paying back in like 2017. So you can get a rate as low as, let's say, 18 cents, 19 cents a kilowatt hour rate. You can get that locked in month to month, year to year. And while the next guy or your neighbor who's not going solar is paying 32 cents a kilowatt hour rate, you're only paying 19. Sure. So that's the biggest benefit. You'll see immediate lowering your cost. Yes, it's savings, and we don't always like to use the word savings because it's subjective, but you will save money. We call it a byproduct. Savings is a byproduct of going solar. What you're really getting when you go solar is you're getting that predictability. You're going to know month to month what your bill is going to be. You can budget, right? I mean,
Budget, that's huge right now in the inflationary economy.
right. With inflation, how do you budget, right? The dollar's not going as far as it used to, right? And it seems like every year it changes. It just gets less and less, right? So if you have predictable bills, you can budget. I always ask, you got a car payment that stays the same every month, right?
Yep.
Your mortgage relatively stays the same every month, right? Until the taxes go up. But your electric bill, right? It's all over the place, right? So, and you never know what it's going to be. Do you know what your electric bill is going to be next month?
Nope.
If you didn't have solar.
I didn't. Yeah, it's gonna be $13. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Good for you. The other side of it is the protection, right? So I famously always talk about my very first customer that I signed up when I went into solar. I locked them in for a 13-cent kilowatt hour rate for 25 years. That was 8 years ago. We're paying 32 cents now in Connecticut.
It's almost 3 times.
Yeah. So 3x, right? So imagine what that customer is saving month to month now versus the next person, his neighbor who didn't go solar.
Sure.
Right?
So when you locked them in, it wasn't a huge savings, maybe 40, 50 bucks then. Now it's $200, $300 a month.
Absolutely. And that's a good point because, when you look at a PPA, when you look at solar in general, it's definitely, you have to look at a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15, a 20, right? I locked this customer in at 13 cents in 2017, I believe it was. It's 32 cents now, right? So traditionally on a PPA, yeah, you might only save, call it 25%. Some, depending on the situation, you could save 30% or even more in your first month, in your first year, right? But typically we'll see, that 20, let's call it just a range of 20 to 40%. Sometimes it doesn't seem like a lot up front, but then as the utility companies continue to go up 4, 5, 6% every year, that compounds, so 5 years from now, all of a sudden you're saving, a substantial amount of money. That's the protection part of it. I'll have to plug one of my reps, our sales reps, one of our very successful sales reps, Dave Mendelson, famously said, it's a hedge against inflation. You use that term,
Yep.
right? And it really is. You're protecting your dollar because a dollar now is worth more than a dollar in 10 years.
Sure.
The last part of that is control, right? Everybody wants control. So, you can't control your electric bill. You can't control your cable bill, right? Your water bill, whatever it is, your taxes. You don't have much control until you go solar. So you can actually control your electricity, where it comes from. If you're if you're really into, clean energy, renewable energy, trying to reduce your carbon footprint, solar is the best way to do it. So you're creating clean energy right off of your roof. It's from a renewable source instead of, using fossil fuels and whatever else that, the utility company decides, nuclear, whatever it is. Nuclear reactors have to be cooled down with fresh water.
Okay.
Right. So you're actually using fresh water to cool down nuclear reactors, right? So in that case, imagine all the people out there that don't have fresh water, right?
Right.
So that we're using a resource now to create energy through, a nuclear process. So the control factor is really big. So predictability, protection, control, that's really what you're getting when you go solar.
Sure. She talked a lot about control. In our market, another term used a lot is sustainability. How does battery storage maybe come into a PPA or lease for a customer? How can they be more sustainable in the case of a wildfire or a tornado or whatever natural disaster might be, to where their home is secure and they can have energy during an outage?
Yeah, so one of the it's a great question, great segue, and great timing because our PPA provider just actually launched a battery option for us
Okay.
to be able to add to a PPA. So not all PPAs can actually have a battery. So we are able to attach a battery or batteries to a PPA now. In some markets, in some financing companies didn't allow that. So now you can actually go solar with a battery, with a PPA. So that gets factored into your monthly price. And essentially it works as a backup. As far as resiliency, right, and sustainability, power goes out, that battery is going to be able to kick right in and you'll be able to be up and running. It also helps, your system actually needs power. The solar system actually needs power to continue to work, right? So in most cases, if you don't have a battery and the grid goes down, your solar system shuts down, right? The reason for that is because your inverters actually need power to invert that DC current into AC, which is what your home uses. So when you have a battery, now the battery will power those inverters and your system will continue to provide solar energy in an outage. So really you can continue to have power for days, even weeks with a battery. So that's really the whole home solution, to having that protection and backing up. But with a PPA, it's great because, again, you actually don't have to buy the batteries. You don't have to pay that upfront cost, just like with the solar. It becomes part of your system. It becomes part of your electrical infrastructure.
Sure. So we always talk about in our market anyhow, if they ask, well, what's it cost to have a battery, or how does that play into my system? The customers are curious about sustainability. And so it sounds like they don't have to come up with that lump sum out of pocket. The PPA provider will provide that at a monthly cost to them, and they can roll it into their budget for that month.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give you an example. So I don't have batteries on my system. Unfortunately, when I signed up, they weren't offering batteries yet. I don't know if we'll be able to do a retrofit, but that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking at. I don't lose power too often, but I just like the peace of mind.
Yeah.
I always tell the story of when I first had my ADT system turned on. I had the best night of sleep that night, knowing that every window was locked down, every door. I didn't have to worry about, there's always that 1% in the back of my head that's going, oh, what if somebody breaks in? I put an aluminum bat under my bed in case I have to come out swinging.
Yeah.
I tell my son all the time, I said, hey, don't make a lot of noise, in the middle of the night, because I might come out with my bat. But yeah, so it does get rolled into the payments. That's the biggest benefit. Again, going back to that debt to income, right? You're not purchasing the system. So in most cases, and this, now we're kind of evolving into some of the things that are said out in the public about PPAs, right? There is no money down, right? I didn't have to put down a deposit for a PPA. If you have a battery, you don't have to put down a deposit for a battery versus cash or a loan, right? And now what I simply get, and again, going back to the way I described it, is the financing company is going to actually put the panels on through Earthlight, and Earthlight's going to do that. But I'm not paying for those panels. I'm simply paying for the energy that it creates. So what they do in a PPA is they'll come up with a number, a totality of annually what the system's going to produce, right? So let's say it's 10,000 kilowatt hours, and then depending on what the system creates, I'm going to pay a kilowatt hour rate. And what they do with that rate now is they take that rate and they spread it out on the payments for 12 months. Compared to like an old PPA where your system, a power purchase agreement, if your system made 1,000 kilowatt hours in August, you had to pay for that 1,000 kilowatt hours, whatever your rate was, right? So if you got a kilowatt hour rate of 100, 15 cents, it, times 1,000 kilowatt hours. The next month, if it only made 500, then you'd pay less. And typically what happens with our net metering process is you build up these credits, and then they roll into the months where your system isn't really producing, So now what they do is they take the totality of the production, they multiply it by your rate, and then they divide it by 12, and you get a monthly stabilized payment. There's a couple different ways, obviously, in programs you can do. There's a 0%, and then there's an escalating program. There's a couple different escalators that we offer as well. Can go anywhere from 0.99% to 2.99%. A lot of our customers will go with the 0%, but it really just depends on what's right for you. So the battery, in a sense, will be added to that, and it will be positioned at a price point, and that will either escalate or stay the same with the PPA.
Okay. You mentioned you don't have to pay any money out of pocket. There's no down payment. There's nothing like that that's involved. Can a customer prepay their lease or their PPA and take that utility rate from 18 down to 13, or lock in a lower monthly payment with a little bit of down payment?
So when I first started in solar, there was a very specific prepaid option. And typically the prepaid option was you would pay money up front and essentially be able to pay down the kilowatt hour rate. Okay. It's very similar in the sense now, but they offer you a discount in the sense on the kilowatt hour rate. And it depends on which provider you go with. It could be a 5%, could be 8%, could be 10%. So that option is out there. The benefit to that option is you're able to pay down your kilowatt hour rate and still, which we haven't talked about, you still get a lot of the benefits of the PPA, which really, beyond the predictability, control, and protection, you're also going to get maintenance, for the life of the PPA. The system is insured, and you also get a production guarantee. Okay.
And you don't own that system, so if something goes wrong, you're not worried about having to call electrician out or Earthlight out to come fix it. The PPA provider is carrying that system, and that bill is theirs, more or less, correct?
Yeah, so the maintenance and repairs are all included. What will happen is if something does go wrong with the system, Earthlight is going to take on the maintenance, and they will repair the system or replace anything that needs to be taken care of for the life of the PPA.
Okay. Very nice. And the PPA system out there, you mentioned things have changed in the industry as far as how they work and how they operate. Um, is there any reason that I shouldn't sell a PPA to my mom or my sister?
I think there's, solar has had its share of, let's call it negative press over the years, like just any other industry, right? It really comes down to the practice of the sales organization, and the installing contractor. With your sales reps or the consultants that come into your house, the analysts that come into your house, there's a lot of information that needs to be transferred. We always recommend to do your research first. Arm yourself with as much knowledge as you can before you start the solar process, because there is a lot of information out there and it's different for everyone. You know, People assume because I work in solar that I bought my system. I didn't buy my system. It just wasn't right for me. My mother wants to go solar, and she's in her 70s. There's different benefits depending on, how long you're going to be in the house, how long you have to live, right?
Right.
So my mother is in her 70s, and it wouldn't really make sense for her to purchase her system because her system's going to have roughly about a 7 to 8 year payback, and she needs money now, right? She's on a fixed budget.
Right.
So the PPA, there's no money down. It offers immediate relief on your electric bill. So she's going to recoup those, call it savings, right away. Okay. One of the big misconceptions about the PPA, and you'll hear it many times over, is it's free.
Sure.
Right? People will say, oh, it's free solar, you know, no money down,
free.
free solar, no cost, right? It all depends on how it's presented, right? So is it free? Well, you're not paying for the panels, but you're going to be paying something, right? And nothing is free. My dad used to tell me, if it's free, it's too good to be true, right? Nothing in this world is free, right? So we hear a lot about that, and then customers will actually expect, hey, I'm going to put these solar panels on my roof, and I'm just going to live the rest of my life and not have to pay an electric bill. That's not how it goes, right? So the system's going to go up on your roof. You don't have to pay a retainer. There's no deposit. There's no upfront money. You're going to pay a monthly payment to the financing company that holds the PPA, but it's just going to be at a far lower rate than your electricity.
Yeah. So you're paying a utility bill, swapping that bill for a lower one with utility.
Yeah.
Or with the lease or PPA provider, and you're gonna lock that in for years to come.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We're just kind of swapping you out. We're taking, clean, renewable energy from a source that you can control. That's going to give you predictability. It's going to give you that protection at a lower rate instead of paying the utility company, which is, unpredictable, high cost, always going up, fossil fuels, so we are swapping it out. You're actually still going to have a bill from the utility company because here in Connecticut, the utility company actually owns the lines, the power lines.
Right.
So you're going to pay typically a service just to have your active service with the utility company with the lines, right? So you can shop around with your supply. And we recommend that. One of the biggest, again, misconceptions of solar is if you go solar, you get all your power. Well, in reality, in Connecticut, you're probably averaging around 60%, I think, somewhere between 50 and 60%. We have 100-foot oak trees and maple trees everywhere, hills and mountains, right? Probably, and similar
to our climate.
right, similar to your climate there. So a lot of customers aren't getting 100% of their power from solar. So it actually supplements what they get. So you may get 80% from your solar system, but you're still going to need 20% of your annual power for utility, right? So again, you're going to have an electric bill. At the very least, it's going to have a connection fee on it. We pay $9.62 here. So you may get your solar bill. So for me, for instance, I'm paying around $140 for my solar bill. It's 100% of my power. So I'm lucky enough to get 100%. And I say lucky because, not very many people do. And I'm going to get a $9.62 bill from the utility company. If I overproduce, it may be able to take care of that, but I'm still going to get an electric bill from the utility.
Okay. All right. So, Eric, we started this conversation talking about the excitement we have in the Oregon market about bringing this product to our customers. Obviously, it's no secret the federal incentives are changing here at the end of the year pretty dramatically in our market. The ITC going away. Some of the state incentives are probably kind of start pulling back as well. Solar can now kind of stand on its own, which is another piece of exciting news for the future if you look at it that way. So how do you feel about the future of solar and PPAs and how that will look for maybe our customers on the West Coast without some of those federal incentives?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we have sort of evolved out of the early adoption phase and, mass adoption, right? So most companies, the states, the government, they wanted to make it as easy as possible
Right.
to go solar, right? We know that our energy consumption, our energy needs goes up every year in this country. And the infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure right now is behind. And as a whole. I know in Connecticut, we have one, I think the third oldest grid in the country, right? So the maintenance, the repairs, the constant expansion just can't keep up. So going solar is always going to be a great option. The incentives made that easy. Now some of those incentives are pulling back. Like you said, solar standing on its own. I think that in the next probably 3 to 5 years, you're really going to see the PPA take off. I think, especially in your market, because it's new, it's going to give your homeowners a new option to think about how they electrify their home. With EVs now, everybody's getting an EV, even if it's a hybrid, you still plug it in. I have a hybrid Jeep, we plug it in as well. So the PPA is going to get, in my opinion, will be more popular because with inflation, with people needing to hold back their money to protect their finances, the PPA is going to offer them an option to go solar without that money down and to be able to put money back in their pocket right away. I see that as becoming even more popular now. It's going to put more stress on the organizations, though, in a good way, because sales process, sales practice, business ethics is going to come to the forefront. I know that in Connecticut, they are putting together standards that actually rate companies now based on their sales practices,
Yeah.
based on the quality of their installs, which is great for consumers. So they're really moving forward with a lot of consumer protection initiatives. So I think you're going to see that.
Yeah, we're seeing that right now. We have a consumer protection bill going into play this fall for us. So where sales reps or the educators for the customer have to be licensed. You have to have a background check done, and we have to have good standing practices, which is only good for the industry. I can't tell you how many bad sales tactics sell a lot of solar for us.
Yeah.
As an honest provider. So
Yeah, and I think we're working our way out of that. I think in the very beginning with mass adoption, it was kind of the Wild West. Companies, organizations were kind of doing whatever they felt was right. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. People would say things that weren't true, or they would only tell half truths. It's again a lot of times when you hear somebody talk negatively about solar, it's simply because they were just told something that may not have been true or even partially true. They weren't given the whole story, and then it becomes a negative stigma on the industry. Solar works. I can tell you that 100%. It does. It's technology, it's science, right? It really just comes down to the consumer understanding what's best for them. And I think on the West Coast, now that you have this, you're going to have a lot of excitement with your homeowners because, like we've been talking about, people want to keep that money in their pocket. They want to be able to use the sun to power their home. They want to pay less money for their electricity. And the PPA really is going to offer them the path of least resistance, right?
yep.
Because you're not financing anything, you're not putting capital down. Really, ultimately, that's what I call it. It's the path of least resistance. So I really see the PPA taking off even more so in popularity in the next 3 to 5 years, because without those incentives, you know, the cash buyer, the loan buyer is going to have to be in exactly the right situation to do that. whereas the PPA is going to be able to probably capture more of the market because not everybody, especially nowadays, is going to be able to own this.
Sure. Very good.
Well, Tristan, that was great. I'm glad we were able to talk through some of the options on the PPA and go a little bit deeper into what it is. I'm really excited for Oregon out on the West Coast. I think you guys are going to love it. It's going to give your homeowners a completely new option, and you should be excited about it. And I know you're.
Yeah, we're getting really excited about it.
Yeah, your reps will be excited about it. Your homeowners will be excited about it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it lands out there, and I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. That's what we have for today. If you are interested in seeing if solar is a good fit for your home, especially the PPA, if that could be a good fit for you, please make sure you reach out to us. Give us a call. We can send out one of our analysts. It's a no pressure opportunity. We'll educate you on all the benefits of solar and if it's right for you and if it makes sense for you.